Okay, so we're on part two. So from where we left off last time, I just got the line drawing kind of roughed in, and I was just starting to go over it with a mechanical pencil and strengthen the lines up. I found that the 2B lead was probably a little bit too dark in the mechanical pencil, so I switched over to an HB, and then once all the line work was done, it started to look a little bit architectural and clinical. Some of the lines were too hard, so I just got the kneadable eraser and just kind of dabbed over some of the harder lines, just to soften them a little bit. I mean, hopefully they'll still show through. Well, I'm sure they will still show through the graphite powder. But yeah, that's all I've done. And also I got a 2H pencil. That's not the 2H, that was a 2B. There's the 2H. And just put some faint lines just down on the building there, and then just kind of went over them a little bit with the blender. They're going to more or less get lost, you know, when we come to shade them and rub the graphite powder over it, but there should be just a faint suggestion of them there, which is pretty much all I can see in the reference photo anyway. So I just wanted to see what it looked like with a few boards on it. And I just darkened up these darker areas well, because it gets confusing. All you see is lines and you're not sure which is the white one, which is the dark one. So I just put some shade over the dark ones just so I know, because knowing me, I would have gone ahead and shaded all the light ones in and made a mess of it. So yeah, that's all I've done up to now. So it's just been gone over with a mechanical pencil and the set square to sharpen everything up. Now the only thing left to do is to remove any grid lines, you know, particularly in the sky. It probably won't matter so much, you know, in these areas where we're going to be shading quite a bit. Oh, one other thing I've done as well. I don't know if you can see just there, look, we've got this roof of a shed, just a suggestion of a shed just there, just at the back of this, whatever it is. I was going to leave that out and just kind of fill that in with grass and shrubbery, you know, trees and things like that. But the more I looked at it, I thought, no, it does actually need that there. I thought the more kind of complicated this area looks, the more your eyes don't want to look at it, and the more you're going to kind of skip that bit and look at that. This just looked too hard. Too much of a strong angle in the drawing, really. You know, we've got this nice composition going like that, and this hard angle there. It just, I don't know, it just didn't look right. So I thought if we put something behind it and make it all look a bit kind of tangled up looking, you know, angles here, there and everywhere, it'll all kind of end up being, you know, that sort of complicated, well, not complicated, that sort of you know, kind of messy there, and no focal point or anything, no strong lines of anything, because there's so many of them there that they're all kind of intermingling. It'll all end up as, you know, just a insignificant part of the drawing, really. But I think it gives it balance. I think that's probably what I'm trying to say. But yeah, obviously I want the main focal point to be around, you know, this area just here. So just, it's very simple to do. You know, it's just a couple of straight lines there, and we're done. Right, so now all I've got to do is get the eraser, and again I'm going to use the Derwent Soft Art Eraser for this, and I'm just going to gently take out the main offenders, which are, like I say, mainly the ones in the sky there, but just very lightly. And again, I'm not touching the paper with my fingers. I noticed when I was editing part one, the first part of this series, as I was erasing some things, I was going like that with my finger, and oh dear, I was just doing it subconsciously, you know. I thought I've got to go over that with graphite powder, so I'm probably going to end up with a few little fingerprints here and there. So I don't mind any fingerprints in this area at all, because they'll get sort of covered over and lost with all the other textures. But anywhere around here, you know, where we're putting the sky in, we really don't want that. I mean, they are repairable, but it's just a hassle, you know, and we don't want any hassle, do we? So let's keep those fingerprints off there. Okay, and then we just make sure we brush all the crumbs away. Just one crumb left on there is one crumb too many when it comes to putting graphite powder over the top. it'll make some horrendous marks. You know, just one little tiny eraser crumb. You know, you get that, you know, trapped underneath the cotton wool with the graphite, and it'll start making all sorts of funny marks. So, you know, be very thorough with making sure there's no little bits on there. Okay, that's looking okay. So as usual, I've got some graphite powder tipped out on the paper, and it's the bottled graphite powder that I'm using. I've not scraped it off a woodless pencil. It's the Kohinoor graphite powder that I'm going to use for this. I just realised as well, I don't think I've even mentioned what paper I'm using. I'm actually using my usual stuff, you know, the smooth heavyweight Daler and Rowney. Okay, so now I'm just going to dab first of all, and then go in circular motions and just pick up some graphite on the cotton wool there. Probably going to have to do this several times. I'll just start very lightly in the top. And we've got lines from the eraser. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. What has happened there? I've used that eraser before and it's worked perfectly. I've gone really lightly. Why have I got lines? Oh dear. Okay, well that's just not acceptable. The only thing I can do is just try and erase all of that out. So the whole area has more or less been burnished by the eraser. I mean, if this doesn't work, what I shall do is untape this, put it through the scanner. Well, no, there's no need to put it through the scanner. I'll just trace over it. I'll just trace over it on a clean piece of paper. Okay, let's get rid of that. So we're already left with a few streaks in the sky, but thankfully we're going to be putting some clouds in there. So that might help things a little bit. Right, I'm just going to put some more graphite powder on the paper. Get some on the cotton wool. And off we go again now. Has that done the job? Yes, it has. Oh, that's good. I was getting worried then. I thought, oh no, I don't want to have to trace this all over again. Okay, I've got a few little marks there, but we can erase those out, you know, and put some clouds there or something. We can get creative there. So I'm just going to keep repeating this process now. Just keep applying graphite powder, you know, until I've got some nice layers built up there. So I'm just charging up the cotton wool again, just off to the side. And I've got quite a lot of graphite on it this time. I want to try and just darken this corner up here. It looks dark when it goes on, but the more we rub that in, you know, the lighter it's going to get. And again, I'm going to go all over the whole surface of the paper, the entire drawing, absolutely everything. Just going to have, you know, one light layer. Oh dear, we've got the lines in the water. In fact, I wonder if they're probably, yeah, that'll be all right. That'll be all right. They're not too bad there. They're not too bad at all. Because we're going to pull some reflections down anyway, and they'll probably end up looking good. And I've got just one fingerprint there. Now that's not bad. That's not bad at all. I'm quite happy with that. I was expecting a load more fingerprints on this, but no. Well, what could have turned out to be a disaster has turned out to be okay. So obviously then, if this happens to you again, actually erasing the lines out is not a good thing. We've got to literally erase the whole surface of the paper, so that whatever the eraser does to the surface of the paper, it does to the whole area and not just in lines. So I guess, as soft as this eraser is, it's actually burnishing the paper to some degree, and that's what's showing the lines in the graphite there. So definitely erase the whole area seems to be the trick. Okay, now I'm just going to get a clean piece of tissue. There's a few areas like here. I'm just going to try and just lighten them up a fraction. Keep cleaning it. So although it's kind of softening the graphite, it's kind of lifting it a little bit as well. Not really had the desired effect that I wanted. I wanted it a bit lighter there, but never mind. I'm just going to get a little bit more graphite powder on the cotton wool. There's only a little bit left on the paper. I'm just going to see if I can just make this a fraction darker just in this corner here. Okay, that'll do. I think that'll be absolutely fine. I'm not at all worried about that little fingerprint there. We can soon, repair that one, no problem. Just a little bit of dabbing with the kneadable eraser. Just a little bit of a light blend over, and just keep repeating that until it eventually goes. There we go. Okay, so now it's really important that we lay something over this now when we're resting our hands on it. And I'm going to start work on the clouds now, so I'm going to lay that over the drawing. I'm just going to start to kneadable eraser, just dabbing, just to create this soft top edge of this cloud to start with. I'm pretty sure I'm going to go in there with the pencil eraser as well in a minute and take some more out. But this will give you a nice soft edge to the top of the cloud just to start with. These little wispy bits that are kind of floating around and things like that. In fact, what I am going to do, I'm going to put the pencil eraser to one side and I'm going to go in with the big eraser. I think that'll probably be a better option for this. And again, sort of overlapping circular motions, not pressing too hard. I don't want to destroy the paper or anything. Just nice and lightly, just to get this shape in here. Because we're going to go over it with a little bit more graphite just to get some of the cloud shadows and things like that in there. So it's just a case of just keep working at it now, just to remove the graphite powder and just establish these shapes of the clouds. You know, again, they don't have to be, you know, exact shapes of them or anything like that. Use as much artistic license as you want. I'm just copying just a general kind of, you know, idea of them. Because there is a kind of perspective to clouds, so you want to be aware of that. You know, they do get smaller the closer they get to the horizon, and they tend to have sort of flatter bottoms on them. More sort of elongated. You know, they don't look much like clouds at the minute, but you know, we've got to do some work on them and you know, make them look a lot better than this. But all we're concerned about is just the general shape of them at the minute. In fact, I wouldn't even waste your time like I did at the start, you know, tapping like that. I was trying to get a nice soft edge. We can do all that later on. Really, you know, just be brave. Just go straight in with the eraser and just carve that shape out. And then we can worry about the, you know, the fine look of it, the finer details, you know, later on. Kind of lost this tree line a little bit just here. I can just kind of make it out, but we can kind of re-establish it a little bit with the clouds, because the clouds seem to kind of go right behind them and almost outline the trees in some areas, so we can just do something like that. I know there's a tree there, but it does look kind of lighter there in between the leaves and things, so we'll just take some graphite off of there. And the same around this side of the house. It's a little bit lighter. That's what I was trying to do when I was you know, putting the graphite powder down. I was trying to lighten this a little bit by lifting some of the graphite off, but it's not kind of worked, so we'll use the eraser. And again, we've got another tree line there, haven't we, so we can kind of use the eraser to kind of establish that all at the same time. You know, this sort of bottom edge here is going to be the top of the trees. Nice contrast just here with the light of the sky in the corner of this building with the roof and everything. So again, we'll try and, you know, we'll aim to get all of these nice sort of contrasts in. And they kind of go off into cloud shapes. Just clean the eraser. Just rubbing it on a little bit of paper at the side of me. We'll go back in again. Pretty much all of that area there is light. The funny thing is, I'm thinking about it now, you know how I got those lines. I'm sure it's something to do with the graphite powder as well, because that never used to happen to me when I used to scrape the graphite powder off of the Koh-i-Noor pencils. But that is not pure graphite, you know, on the Koh-i-Noor pencil. There's obviously a little bit of clay in there as well, you know, to give it its grading. So I wonder if that's got something to do with, you know, why that doesn't leave lines. I mean, obviously the stuff out of the bottle is just pure graphite powder, and that's the stuff that the forensic scientists used to, you know, get fingerprints and things like that. So it's, you know, it's one of those materials that just tends to show any kind of marks, really, I think. But I haven't used the graphite powder out of the bottle for long. I mean, I've only had this for, what, a year? Or a year and a half or something. And I still tend to stick with the graphite powder that I scrape off of the woodless pencils. I just prefer that. I don't really like this stuff out of the bottle. I'm only kind of using it just to use it up, because it does give a really nice, clean, light area, which is ideal for skies. There's kind of almost a luminosity to it when you can get, you know, a darker area at the top fading down into light. It looks really good. You know, sometimes the graphite powder can look a little, well, I say graphite powder, the graphite scrapings, should I say, from the woodless pencils can look a little bit patchy, you know, here and there. It's probably better to have that look and then blend those patchy areas in a little bit, than to have this hassle of worrying about grid lines, you know, being left in the sky. It seems to haunt me, doesn't it? Lines in the sky, whether it be watercolour or graphite powder. Seems to be my nemesis, that. It's something that's been plaguing me just lately. Keep cleaning the eraser regularly as well, because what you can end up doing is just rubbing graphite into the grain and making a worse mark, you know, so we don't want that. So a nice clean eraser. Just carefully work around these buildings. Okay, so we're getting these shapes established now, aren't we? It's really beginning to take shape. Just need to soften some of the edges a little bit, so you can just press very lightly with the eraser, almost use it like a blender. It's not going to be as good as a blender, but it'll help you when it actually comes to using a blender as well over there. We'll already have, you know, a reasonable fade on some of the edges of the clouds. And I guess we've got some lighter areas here as well, although we've got this overhanging tree there. We'll just add a few lighter areas just there. It'll add a bit more contrast to the foliage on that tree when we come to draw that in. So a lighter area there. You know, it doesn't really have to look like a cloud or anything, but we'll just lighten it up just a little bit. Okay. Keep getting rid of all the bits. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to take the, I think it's either the large, yeah, I think it's the large Derwent blender. Might be the medium size. No, I think it's the large, yeah. And I'm just going to work, in fact, before I do that, I've just tested that there's barely any graphite coming off there, just a little bit, and that'll be fine. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to kind of work just lightly on some of the edges and pull some of that graphite into the cloud a little bit. You know, just here and there. Just look at the reference photo, look at the cloud shapes, look at where the soft edges are. And where the shadow just gently comes up into the cloud, you know, around the base. And just very lightly, you know, just soften out those edges around the base of the clouds. It's going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of playing around with this. It's actually a very satisfying thing to do, I think, this part of the drawing. I find it very relaxing, just, you know, working with a blender, and just gently softening these edges of these clouds and just seeing them start to take shape, you know, right before your eyes. It really starts the picture off, it kind of kick-starts it, you know, once you've got these clouds in, you know, that's the atmosphere of the picture. Kind of sets the mood of the picture as well. You know, I can't kind of sit here and say, now this bit here, just blend that bit there and then just soften that bit there. It's impossible for me to tell you that. You know, you've got to judge this yourself, because you've made the marks with the eraser. They're obviously going to be different to mine. And you just have to kind of look at it and think, yeah, that bit there looks too hard edged, or, you know, this bit just needs a little bit of a shadow underneath it and a little bit of a soften down. You know, you're going to have to kind of gauge it for yourself. But generally what you're looking for, like on these little clouds here, is a soft edge all along the base of the clouds, and a little bit harder and whiter along the top, and a few little shadows in there. You can just put them in simply, look, with the end of the blending stump. And just keep playing around with it like that. Like I say, it's a slow process, but eventually things just start to look natural. Things start to look, you know, real, really nice. It all starts to look more convincing. You know, and if you go over it a little bit too much, it blends too much, just go back in with the eraser, put some more highlights over it, you know, redefine some of the edges of the clouds and things like that. So it's just a very light touch, that's all that you need for this. Very light touch. And as I've mentioned before in one of my videos, when we were doing a drawing similar to this, I've kind of talked about damaging the paper with over blending. If you're pressing hard with one of these things, and you're being very repetitive in the same area, you know, you are going to change the surface of the paper. Basically, you're going to abrade it eventually, and you're going to get left with really dark marks where you don't want them to be, you know, as the graphite kind of builds up on the rough texture of the paper. So a very light touch very light touch. I mean, this graphite powder that's down, you can keep blending and smoothing this forever. It'll just keep blending. You know, it's never going to dry or fix or anything like that unless you put fixative on it, of course. So there's no rush. You know, we don't have to press hard or anything and get things done quickly. We can really take our time with this. And just move the graphite powder around, pick a little bit more up on the blending stump, add it into some of the cloud areas there. So I guess we could call this a case of like manipulating the graphite now. You know, we've already got the cloud shapes in. It's just a case of dragging some of the graphite over them a little bit around the base and to soften them out. And of course, another great tool for this is the brush. That'll give you a nice soft edge as well. So just keep playing around with both of the tools, you know, the blender and the brush. See which is giving you the effect that you want. I mean, obviously the brush is going to do less, but it's going to retain, I say detail, but it's going to retain, you know, the shape of your clouds a little bit better. It's going to give you a very, very soft effect. A really lovely effect. Right, okay, so I'm at the stage now where I've done most of the blending and softening with the blender and the brush. And when I was happy with that, I just literally went over the whole thing with the soft Hake brush. And what that's going to do, it's going to put the very lightest smear of graphite over the lighter areas. And now what we can do with the kneadable eraser, I've already started a little bit here and there, is just start to dab. And what that's going to do, it's going to kind of dab the graphite that was just gently smeared over with this brush. So we're going to get kind of a secondary layer of lights now, and we can use that to our advantage. Like, we can start to overlap the clouds. So where we've got this one here, look, and this one underneath, it kind of overlaps the darker part of the cloud. And so to get that effect, just dabbing with the eraser will just make softer, lighter marks just along the top edge of that cloud. Just highlight it a little bit and make it appear like it's sitting in front of that cloud there at the back of it, almost. I mean, it's not really like that in the reference, but you know, a little bit of artistic license never hurt anybody, did it? So we can kind of, you know, play around and you know, and create that kind of effect. And again, the tops of these clouds, just dabbing with the eraser right on the transitions of them, so it creates kind of a soft edge and a light edge all along the top. But remember to keep folding the blue tack or kneadable eraser, whatever you're using, you know, and keep getting a clean piece, particularly where you want the light areas. And again, it's going to take quite a while, just messing about with it, just playing around until you're satisfied with the look of it. You can even come down into some of these darker areas a little bit and create a little bit of form and shape just there. But if you're not getting back to the whites that you want, go in with the pencil eraser. And I'm just looking for an area now which I need to be whiter. Well, let's just put that there. Let's just work on this bit here. So if we want that to be a bit lighter, look, we need to kind of shape that cloud a little bit more there. Just go in with a pencil eraser. Left with a little bit of a hard edge, but again, going back over that now with the kneadable eraser, we can just soften that transition a little bit. Or of course you could blend it, but that's going to actually put graphite there. And what I'm trying to do now is create some of the lighter areas on the tops of the clouds. So a combination of these two things, and remember to keep brushing the crumbs off in between, or you'll come into trouble, you know, with funny marks and things like that if you do any blending or anything. So a combination of that, and just keep working at it like that. You'll soon start to get the feel of it. You'll get into the flow of it. You know, the picture will start to talk to you eventually. You know, you'll look at it and you think, oh yeah, I can see it kind of happening now. That bit's, you know, looking good. That's what I need to do, you know, in these areas. And it'll soon start to come together, and you'll soon get the idea, you know, of how to do this. You know, keep referring to the reference photo as well, and keep looking for where those light areas are on the tops of the clouds and things like that, and just try and replicate them as best you can. You know, we're not going for exact copies of cloud shapes or anything, like I mentioned before. So, you know, if you've got a shape there that's not in the reference photo, just see what is in the reference photo, and if there's a cloud near it that's similar or something, and it's kind of, you know, lit up a little bit on the top, just copy that. You know, just get the general feel, you know, of what's going on with the light and the shapes. And of course, one of the most important things with this is the finish, the overall appearance, you know, the soft and hard edges. You know, if some edges are too hard, like I can see just here, it looks too hard. It doesn't look right, it's too distracting. So again, you know, we can just go back in with the kneadable eraser and just tap on that transition, and it'll lift a little bit of the graphite off around it, but not enough to create another hard edge. It's almost like blending it, if you like. It just creates a nice softer edge there. And just keep working away at it like that, and eventually you'll get to that point where you think, that's it, that looks fine, I don't need to do any more. So it's just going to be repeating that process, so there'll be no need for me just to keep filming this, because it's just going to be probably the next 30 or 40 minutes of just seeing me just keep dabbing with this and just keep going in with that, just to, you know, create a little bit of shape, and then just dabbing over it again. And it's like I say, these things are up to you. You know, these are your decisions now in your drawings, you know, that you've got to make, you know, to shape these clouds and to get the look that you want. You know, I really can't say any more, you know, about the method of doing this than what I have. It's easy, it's relaxing, but it does take some thought, and you've got to kind of get into the zone a little bit with it. I remember Owen Crawshaw, in one of his painting demonstrations, he says, when you know, painting clouds, you've got to think like a cloud. I don't know what that means. But I kind of understand where he's coming from. You know, just concentrate on the clouds. That's all we're working on at the minute. We're not thinking about any other part of the drawing. So empty your mind of any other thoughts and just think clouds. You know, just keep looking at that reference photo. Even look at the sky near you if it's, you know, got some nice clouds in it, and draw inspiration from that. But you've got to kind of get into the zone of this kind of soft edged and light and dark, very subtle lights and dark tones in there, and understanding whether it needs the brush, the eraser, the blender, the blue tack, you know, to create the marks and the lights and the darks that you want. And also you can, if you want to, probably more at the later stages, you can actually go in with a 2H pencil or a 4H pencil if you want to. And I'm just trying to look for a little bit now that might look good, and maybe around this area that I'm working on, and just very light circular motions, just barely grazing the paper. Just, you know, a very light shade. It'll just bring a little bit more emphasis to the cloud shapes. Obviously we've got to kind of just blend that a little bit, just a touch. We don't need much there, just a little bit. Just blend it out into the surrounding area, and you can get a little bit more impact that way. But again, you know, you might need to go back in and soften some of the edges off a little bit. But that's the way, you know, to do it. That's the way to work with these clouds. You know, and don't rush it. Just spend some time doing it. Spend 10-20 minutes doing this. Take a break, come back, fresh eye, have a good look at it, because it will look different, you know. I know I say that a lot in a lot of the videos, but it's absolutely true. It will look different. You know, you take a break and you come back 5 minutes later after having a cup of tea or a drink or whatever, and you'll see what needs doing. You'll think, oh yeah, I need to get more highlights on the tops of those clouds. It's not really standing out like I thought it was, you know, 20 minutes ago. So yeah, just keep doing that and just keep at it, and you will get there with this. You know, there's no kind of drawing skills involved. It's kind of any shape will do. You know, you don't even have to copy the reference. Any shape will do, as long as you get that perspective right. You know, the clouds are larger on top and they gradually get smaller and flatter along the bottom. You know, you can pretty much make it up if you want to. You know, you can do a really dramatic sky there if you want to. In fact, I even thought about bringing this cloud further over, more into this corner, to give it more of a directional impact on the picture, you know, pointing down more to the house. You know, you can use all those kind of tricks as well. Okay, so I'll switch the camera off now and get on with this. I won't bore you with it anymore, and I'll come back to you in just a little while. Okay, so that's the sky finish now. I'm going to start to make some sense of this area here with the trees and everything. I'll start with a little bit of squigglism. But before I do, quick little tip about the sky. Some of the shadows underneath the clouds there are just a little bit darker than the sky almost. So if you've got any graphite powder left on your piece of paper, you know, what you rubbed in with the cotton wool and everything, just rub the end of the blending stump in it. Just get a very light amount of graphite powder on there, and just gently go under some of the clouds just to darken them off, and then, you know, just give a little soft brush over just to soften everything down, and then that's it. I'm done. It's not looking very dramatic or exceptionally brilliant or anything like that, but I might go back in and tinker around with it later on in the drawing. You know, when I've got a little bit more of this area in with the trees, you know, this kind of tree line sort of thing, and maybe a few darker tones on the building and some of the structures and everything, I might go back in and just emphasize certain areas a little bit more, maybe more highlights or something on the clouds. I don't know yet, but for now I'm just going to leave it like that, and like I say, I'm going to start to put in some of these bushes and trees and everything. I just start to kind of re-establish this line again. It got a little bit lost, but the kind of top edge of this cloud here is going to be more or less the top edge of where the trees are. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to literally just start to outline some of the bush shapes there. I can see, just like outlining with this kind of squigglism technique, and just again, just general shapes Getting the sizes and the proportions about right. Keep looking at the reference photo. This is a 2H pencil, by the way. So I shall just continue on like this. Again, just kind of generalising as I go. I'm not really trying to copy every shape exactly, just get, you know, it's the general shape of, you know, the bushes in there. And where there's sort of an obvious darker bit, you can just kind of press a little bit harder. It'll just help you to kind of remember where everything is, you know, as you're actually doing the squigglism and filling these in, and you keep referring to the reference photo. Yeah, this will just help you a little bit. It's these little darker areas. And then off the top of this thing, we've got a bit of a bush sort of just coming off there. And that goes up there. Sort of like that. Just trying to work out where the tree line starts and finishes, so it kind of ends just about there on that slat there, doesn't it, on the water wheel. Okay, and then we can kind of see through this structure just here. We've got something like that going on. And this gets sort of quite dark here. So I'm just literally just mapping out, you know, the areas. Yeah, something about like that will be fine. Right, we've got the same kind of thing going on just here. Gets a bit more open and loose in this area, so I mean, that's, you know, going to be more sort of a dotted effect there. But I'm just looking where the mass of it is, where I can actually more or less see, you know, an outline there. So we'll just put that in there like that. Okay, so now we've got some areas there which we know we can get stuck into. I need to go around actually just here and there and just reinstate some of these lines again. They've got a little bit faded just here and there. Obviously we're going to make a lot more of this you know, throughout the drawing, so I just want to get the main trunks and branches in just to get me off to a good start. Okay, and we've got some more just here. And this bit just here is more foliage than anything, so Again, we'll spend more time on this in a little while. We'll just indicate just a little bit of foliage there, just so that we don't forget. Not that we will forget, but I just like to put a few little bits and pieces in. Just helps me sort of gauge what's going on in the picture, you know. It helps everything to kind of tie in as I'm doing everything. So just a few little bits here and there. Okay, that'll do. That'll get us off to a decent start, I think, now with the trees and the bushes in the background there. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to end the video here, and then we'll make a part 3, and we'll really get stuck into these then. But now we've got the sky in, all the line works, you know, pretty much there. We've kind of lost it a little bit here, but that's all right, because we don't want it to be too dark just here. We're going to be kind of adding some textures and, you know, grass shapes and things like that over here, so I can still just about make out what's going on. So it shouldn't be a problem to kind of re-establish all this stuff. Okay, so I'll see you in part 3. Bye for now.